All right, I am back with a special video. At long last, our national nightmare is over. Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Activision-Blizzard King has been not just approved, it has been closed. It was officially approved late last night when the UK's CMA withdrew their complaints about cloud gaming or whatever, and this morning it officially closed. Microsoft now owns Activision Blizzard, and this thing that has gone on for 2 years or something is now over. We have said many, many times, like, oh, it's the FTC lost their case, it's a done deal. And, it's been a done deal for a very long time. It was just sort of a matter of time, and now that time has come. And I want to reflect on this a bit in a way where people can't just look at one tweet or one headline I wrote and although I will have to have a headline for this video, I guess, and a thumbnail, and point to that as my opinion on this thing, as my feelings about this are pretty complicated, although the ultimate conclusion I arrive at is, no, I don't really like this, and it feels weird and bad for the industry as a whole. This is not me saying this as some sort of Sony fan, this is just me as an observer and a journalist in this industry against super consolidation, which is, I don't know what else to call this, because it is hard to imagine any deal really bigger than this other than someone maybe buying Nintendo, which seems unlikely. I don't think Nintendo would sell, but Microsoft thought about trying to buy Nintendo in the past, as leaked documents have said. So what's happened over the last, I don't know, at least year or so is a lot of bullshit. This whole case on all sides has been just so much disingenuous posturing and bullshit. And I think one of the reasons people think I'm for or against this deal or whatever is because you can pick a bunch of individual articles I wrote about how someone's argument is stupid and be like, oh, you supported the other side. No, I've said many times, all of the arguments around this have been extremely disingenuous and bad. We could start with the counter side, where Sony has always been protesting this deal because they think it will give Microsoft monopoly. They think it will directly hurt them by ripping away all of these games and making them exclusive, including Call of Duty, one of their biggest third-party games. And Microsoft has said, no, we won't do that. Here's the deal. We'll sign this. We'll give it to you for at least a decade, if not more. And Sony's like, no, we don't trust you. We don't trust you. And then all of these emails come out saying, no, of course, like Jim Ryan saying in private, no, of course, they're not going to take Call of Duty away from us. This is not a big deal. We'll be fine. But publicly, they were saying the opposite. And I never believed that they actually thought Microsoft would take away Call of Duty from them and erase that portion of the player base. I don't think no one believed that. Sony didn't believe that. So their whole case was really based on that fact. That they thought they'd lose all these exclusives, and they don't even seem like they're going to lose Blizzard like games like Overwatch or Diablo, and it was never an argument that rang true at all, and it turns out it wasn't true. The FTC meanwhile was, all of these regulatory bodies were really just parroting Sony talking points more or less. A lot of this focused on Call of Duty. And which had Microsoft kind of contort itself as to why that wouldn't be exclusive when other games would be. I'll get to that in a minute. But the FTC, by the end, they were like, oh, well, what if Microsoft, has an unfair advantage now that they own Call of Duty? And, even if it's on both platforms, what if they offer exclusive Christmas skins or something in Call of Duty? And it's these are people that have no awareness of the industry at all. Sony has been getting those deals from Activision for exclusive skins, exclusive beta access for years. And just nothing. The FTC's case was a worse version of Sony's case. So, in terms of just making an argument, it was bad. And I knew this would never end up actually blocking the deal for any length of time. The CMA, we can go to the CMA too. Their whole thing was they approved everything except they were hung up on cloud gaming. Cloud gaming, which is a tiny fraction of a fraction of the market right now. They believe that this would give Microsoft an unfair advantage in cloud gaming, which that was not really even on the table for anyone. Even people protesting this deal, that was not on their radar really at all. So this created this really weird delay where Microsoft had to do this bizarre thing, giving Ubisoft streaming rights for a while to Activision-Blizzard games. So now those are on Ubisoft Plus. It's very stupid, but like, again, the CMA just made a point that like, it was very hard to be like, yes, cloud gaming, truly, this is the root of the issue here. But on Microsoft's side, even more bullshit. Just so much bullshit. Like, legally, yeah, I guess this was all fine, but their arguments was always like, we just want to spread the joy of gaming to all the gamers in the world, and everyone is free to enjoy this as long as you have Xbox Game Pass. That was the kind of undercurrent. Like, yeah, Sony can get all these games if Sony lets us run Xbox Game Pass on PlayStation, which obviously is not going to happen. Like, you want to make money, you want to get all of the Activision-Blizzard games, you want to offer Call of Duty on Game Pass to dramatically increase your Game Pass subs. Your ultimate goal for Xbox is mainly to increase Game Pass subs, as that will make you way more money than software or hardware will if you can get enough people subscribed to that. And you want revenue printing avenues like King. King is a mobile arm with 250 million monthly active users that just hand you money for Candy Crush lives and things, which are all still really popular, even if we in the gaming public don't really care or know about that. And they just want to add to their giant, previously non-existent arsenal of first-party IPs to bolster that in the future. So while Call of Duty and, you know, Diablo 4 are multi-platform, whatever Activision Blizzard develops next that isn't those games will probably be almost certainly Xbox exclusive. And just Activision is a giant chunk of the industry, $69 billion. Nothing is close to that except Nintendo. Even you think of EA, oh, that's big. That's $35 billion. Ubisoft, that's like $4 billion. Like, I don't think people really get the scale of this here. It's not like all of these companies are worth $50 to $70 billion. Like, Activision by far is miles ahead of all these other ones. So that's been a thing that I think is not reinforced enough here. And the sheer amount of stuff that Microsoft has just bought for themselves is very odd. So we have gone from a company that had its core IPs, Halo, Gears of War, Forza, and then, you know, Microsoft Flight Simulator, like, and then things that come and go, Perfect Dark, Fable, you know, stuff like that. But they were never competing with Sony in that front in any meaningful capacity. And their own first-party studios, they couldn't make them expand beyond these existing IPs into anything meaningful. So they just bought a ton of stuff. And like, Microsoft just released this trailer with literally an acquisition trailer showing all of the IPs that are now under their stable. And like, it's insane. Like, to go from Microsoft of like a couple of years ago before the Bethesda deal to this, they have there's like a little image here now. They have Overwatch, Starfield, Tony Hawk, Candy Crush, Doom, Fallout, StarCraft, Crash Bandicoot, Elder Scrolls, Call of Duty, Warcraft, Diablo, and I guess Minecraft they bought before that. And like, this is their like picture of their own franchises here. And like, the only ones they even had before were like Sea of Thieves, Halo, Gears of War, Senua's Saga, Flight Simulator. Like, it's, you know, they've increased their first party IPs by like a factor of 4, owning some of the most iconic franchises in gaming just because they had a giant war chest to spend this stuff on, and were appropriately positioned in the industry to buy stuff like this. Like, Sony could not buy Activision Blizzard. It couldn't. It's like half the value of Sony. That would never happen. Whereas Microsoft is a $1.5–2 trillion company at this point. So like, yeah, it's a good chunk of change for them, but no one else outside of like Amazon and Apple or whoever are in a position to even do that. Nintendo couldn't, Sony couldn't. Sony's spending the big bucks buying Bungie for like $3.5 billion. And those are the, you know, maybe they'll go and do a bigger acquisition after this, but you know, it was never really a level playing field. And like, to hear, I forget who said this. It was like, I think it was Satya Nadella, where he was like, oh, like game on, like we can buy stuff, you can buy stuff, like, let's just compete. And literally Sony cannot compete at this level. Not like to knock Sony, but they can't buy a company this big. It's impossible. So that is one aspect here that always felt strange to me in this, like, oh, we're just competing here thing. And it never really sat right with me. This whole deal just never really sat right with me. And it feels very bizarre for me to see, like, this is the console war space, I guess, but like Xbox fans celebrating this, like celebrating some $70 billion corporate merger because why? You get Call of Duty on Game Pass now and like portable games on Nvidia. What? I don't. This seems like such a weird thing to celebrate if you're just like a gaming fan. Like on the ground, for most people, probably not that much is going to change as a result of this deal. Again, a couple things thrown on Game Pass if you're an Xbox player. With this deal, nothing right now seems like it's being taken off PlayStation or prevented from coming to PlayStation. And some more access to these games on other platforms. And we signed a Call of Duty deal with the Nintendo Switch. Like, oh, so cool. I just don't fundamentally believe that mass consolidation is good for most industries, and that includes the video game industry. But now, because this happened, it's not just this deal specifically. It's because now that this deal happened, it's hard to imagine any other deal being off the table. Like, again, this is one of the biggest deals even possible in this industry, unless it's someone buying Nintendo, someone buying, I guess, all of Sony, or Sony spinning off PlayStation to buy it. There's nothing comparable. Again, EA is the next closest thing. I guess if we're calling like Tencent a video game company, that's up there too. But like that could be the one scooping things up, but they're just majority investors in a bunch of things. But all of these other studios now, it's even more than before. It feels like fair game, and they're just going to be snapped up and snapped up and snapped up. And whether that's by, Microsoft itself, by Sony, or the tech giants finally pull the trigger and other people besides Microsoft try to get in, Amazon, Apple, Google might have quit gaming at this point. But it's essentially open season. And on both sides, it's open season because it's not like most of these companies don't want to be acquired. Like there was this whole story about Disney maybe wanting to acquire EA. And in that story, it's like EA was in talks with NBC Universal and like Disney and Amazon and all these, like they're shopping themselves around because the people who own EA, executive shareholders, whatever, want a giant payout from a deal like this. And that's what we've seen with Activision-Blizzard. There are a ton of people making a metric ton of money from this deal, as opposed to continuing to run as an independent entity, maybe seeing interest in their games fade over time and like having to maintain like the whole brand and like do all this stuff. Now Bobby Kotick is working one more month and walking away with $400 million. So yes, obviously he wanted to do this deal. And there's a bunch of other companies that want to do that as well. And for as much as you say you want to be an independent entity and you enjoy your freedom and all of this stuff, there's always a number. And my favorite independent-minded company, Bungie, who extracted themselves from Microsoft, who worked for Activision, then extracted themselves from Activision, and were so happy about being independent, now got bought by Sony for $3.5 billion, and are now their live service consultants, in addition to running Destiny 2 in their own games. I believe there is a price for everyone except maybe Nintendo. I think you could offer Nintendo like $500 billion, and they'd be like, screw you. Like they would not agree to that. But I don't think this is a good omen for the industry. But it's also not surprising because when lately has, big tech America not really gotten exactly what they want in any meaningful capacity? And like people are saying like, oh, well, the FTC is still going to sue and the FTC is going to pursue this. And you know what the FTC is doing now? Trying to go after Amazon, because Amazon is probably the most crushing monopoly in the country, if not one of them in the world, with its complete domination of buying anything online, essentially. So the FTC is going after them next. And I really doubt that's going to pan out. Like, it just seems increasingly like these corporations, to quote Deus Ex Human Revolutions, the corporations have more power than the government. And that it just feels true in a lot of ways, like not literally, but through influence, through lobbying, through, these legal cases and, the FTC being unable to coherently present their cases or in a convincing way present their cases, or these tech companies, if they do get penalized, find some way to work around it. And Microsoft is not like the guiltiest of this, and certainly there are far worse things that giant corporations have done than buy large video game companies. But in terms of industry competitiveness, competition, like this entire space, it doesn't seem like this is a good thing. It's going to open the door for a lot more things like this, and there will be a lot fewer independent publishers, and there will be a lot more just condensed into companies that are already huge, and they're just going to get more huge. And that will make it even harder and harder for smaller companies to get a foot in. It will change motivations, because if your main goal is not necessarily just purely focused on your games, and it is focused on pumping yourself up in various ways for potential acquisition, that really kind of changes the math on things. And I think if we enter an industry where, 60-70% of all publishers are now just, trying to get scooped up so their executives can have some huge payday, I don't think that is a good state of the industry. I also don't know if fair is the right word, but just straight up buying every classic franchise in gaming because you can afford it does not feel great. I'm hoping we just continue to get good games out of this, because as a consumer, all I want to play is good games made by people who are treated correctly in a perfect world. And hopefully that will happen. I do know that a lot of people who work at Activision-Blizzard are actually excited about this, because maybe they did not like the culture at Activision-Blizzard, which, as you may recall before this, they were getting buried in harassment lawsuits. And even Kotick himself had harassment stuff. And that all got eclipsed then by this Microsoft deal. And I guess they're hoping corporate culture changes and it's not as toxic as it's been. I very much hope that too. So that could be a good thing that comes out of this for employees themselves. But a reason for the entire deal to exist, not so much. So yeah, as you can see, I think it's complicated. I have very complicated feelings about this. Fundamentally, it just feels like this was a bridge too far. This was too big of a deal. I remember thinking that the Bethesda deal was too big at $7 billion for Elder Scrolls and Fallout and Doom and Wolfenstein. That felt like, oh my God, are you kidding? They're going to spend $7 billion and just get all those franchises? That doesn't seem right. And then we have a deal 10 times that size a few years later for even bigger franchises. And yeah, it was a bit of a pain, and a couple of regulatory agencies balked at it, but here we are, and it always felt like a done deal for months and months before this, despite what anyone was saying. So yeah, it's not really about what happens next with Activision. I don't think fundamentally that many things will change on us, the gamer side, but the industry is going to change, and it might take a little while for this to kick in, but it's already started. This consolidation thing was already happening before this, and now with this, I don't think nothing is off the table. I can't see another deal that would be more scrutinized by regulators than this, outside of maybe Nintendo. There isn't one. I don't think it exists. And so anyone who wants to acquire anyone, and if that person wants to sell, it's probably going to happen. So get ready for that. Could be Microsoft buying more things. Microsoft is probably going to ease off the gas for a little bit now and not push their luck, but other companies, I do think we're going to start seeing tech and entertainment giants try to scoop up some of these other publishers. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, to say the least. And those are my expanded thoughts on things. That was roughly, 8,000 tweets worth of thoughts. And I'm not writing more than one article about this today. I'm just so tired of talking about this in general. It's exhausting. But anyway, thanks for hearing me out and listening to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure there will be no console warring among my extremely sane viewers, so let's keep it that way. But yeah, so thanks for watching. I will talk to you soon. Take care.